Oh, it's really a hot day today. The temperature is so high today and I'm feeling really hot. Although there is fan, I'm still feeling hot. Let me take a glass of cold water. Now I got a little bit of relief by taking the cold water from the refrigerator. Well, students, hello everybody. Two things came just now. Hot and cold. These two things, hotness and coldness, can be related to the word temperature. The word temperature defines whether it is hot or cold. It may be a substance or the environment or any liquid or any solid object. So temperature is the measurement of degree of hotness or coldness. We define temperature as a degree of hotness or coldness. The measurement of temperature is done by a special instrument known as thermometer. There are three types of thermometers, which I will be telling you a bit later, describing them. There are thermometers and the degree of hotness or coldness is measured in some unit. Just as we measure the unit of solid objects in kgs, in grams, the unit of liquids in milliliters, centiliters. So also the degree of hotness or coldness is measured with the help of thermometers using some units. Degree Celsius or centigrade. It is written as degree C. Degree Fahrenheit. It is written as degree F. And the last one is Kelvin. We do not write degree Kelvin, we simply write it Kelvin or K. So these are the units which are used in different countries for the purpose of the measurement of hotness or coldness of any substance or any liquid or even the surroundings. Degree Celsius or centigrade, degree Fahrenheit and Kelvin. There are three types of thermometers. Clinical thermometer, laboratory thermometer and maximum and minimum thermometer. While clinical thermometers are used to measure the temperature of human body and it is used by doctors, nurses in the hospitals, laboratory thermometer is used to measure the temperature of liquids. As the name says, laboratory. So it is used in laboratory to measure the temperature of acids, some chemicals or bases, etc. On the other hand, maximum and minimum thermometer is used for the measurement of the surrounding temperature. If I am feeling hot today, I cannot measure the temperature with the help of clinical thermometer or laboratory thermometer. For that, I have to use a maximum and minimum thermometer. And the range of a laboratory thermometer is from 35 degrees centigrade to 45 degrees centigrade, and you see it is small compared to laboratory thermometer. The range of laboratory thermometer is from minus 10 degrees centigrade to 110 degrees centigrade, and comparatively clinical thermometer is smaller in size. However, the common thing here in all these thermometers is that they are filled with mercury. However, laboratory thermometers can also have alcohol filled inside the bulb, which I have already discussed with you. Laboratory thermometers may also have alcohol because alcohol does not stick to the walls of the glass. Hence, alcohol is also used rarely these days. These days we have digital thermometers. You can see a digital thermometer which measures the temperature and shows it in digits, whereas the other one on the left hand side is analog, where there are some markings and the mercury reaches the marking level to show the exact temperature. Digital thermometers are used widely these days because the accuracy is also given by these thermometers. Therefore, these are the common types of thermometers which are used in our day-to-day activities. Laboratory, clinical, and maximum and minimum thermometer. Construction of a thermometer. I have a clinical thermometer with me. As I told you, it is comparatively smaller to a laboratory thermometer. The lowest part of this thermometer is known as the bulb of the thermometer, whereas the upper is the glass tube with calibrations. That means they are numbered from 35 degrees centigrade to 45 degrees centigrade. And this is a clinical thermometer, so it is placed under the tongue or between the armpit, which allows the heat of the body to come to this bulb, and ultimately because of the heat, the mercury in the bulb rises through a very small capillary tube and shows the temperature. So this is the bulb, the lower end, and this is the glass tube in case of a laboratory thermometer. However, in laboratory thermometer, sometimes the bulb is also filled with alcohol. However, there is a difference between laboratory thermometer and a clinical thermometer. In a clinical thermometer, there is a kink or a lock. There is a kink or a lock because when the thermometer, after inserting inside our body, it is removed, the doctors or nurses, they hold it in this way and check the temperature. The kink or the lock does not allow the mercury to fall back into this bulb, and so it remains in this tube. However, when we take the temperature of any liquid with the help of laboratory thermometer, we cannot remove the laboratory thermometer from the liquid because there is no lock or kink in case of laboratory thermometer. However, there is a kink in a clinical thermometer. There are some do's and don'ts of using a thermometer. We should never touch the bulb of the thermometer before inserting it inside our body. Because the heat from our body may flow it, we should never touch the bulb of a laboratory thermometer also, because the heat from our body will flow it and will not get the correct temperature. Another thing is, since it contains mercury, which is a very poisonous substance, utmost care should be taken that there is no breakage of the bulb of the thermometer inside our mouth, because mercury is a very deadly poison which may even lead to death. In our junior classes we have learned that heat is a form of energy. Therefore, energy cannot remain static in one place. It has to move. Therefore, heat transfer takes place. The transfer of heat takes place. There are three ways by which heat is transferred: conduction, convection, and radiation. In the first process of transfer of heat, that is conduction, transfer of heat takes place in solids. Say for example, iron, steel, copper, aluminium. In the second case, that is convection, the transfer of heat takes place in liquids. When we boil anything in a pan, say water or oil, the whole water becomes heated up. That mode of heat transfer in liquids is known as convection. We will do activities to see one by one the three modes of transfer of heat. The third is radiation, when transfer of heat requires no particular medium. On a winter day, we prefer to sit outside wherever there is sunlight, because our body becomes warm. So that warmth that we get in our body comes from the sun. The infrared rays from the sun travels and our body is warmed up. Similarly, a hot iron used for pressing our clothes emits heat. That emission of heat from the iron on the environment is known as radiation. So these are the three processes by which heat is transferred. We will see it by doing a small activity, and it will be very interesting. Students, as I told you, transfer of heat takes place by three different methods: conduction, convection, and radiation. In the first mode of transfer of heat, the transfer of heat takes place through solids like iron, steel, magnesium, copper, etc. Let us perform an activity to see the transfer of heat in solids. In this case of transfer of heat, I have taken a small piece of iron and I have fixed 3 pins to this iron with the help of candle wax. Now let us see what happens when I start heating this strip of iron. So we can see gradually the iron is becoming red hot. there is no direct contact of heat with the pins. So one pin has fallen off. Let us see what happens to the other two pins. Second pin, and finally let us see what happens to the third one. And finally the third pin has also fallen off. Now this is an example of transfer of heat in solids. The wax present on the other side of the iron strip was melted because of the transfer of heat in iron. In the second activity, which is the mode of transfer of heat in liquids, the setup of this activity has a beaker filled with water, and the bottom of the beaker can be seen to be pink in color because I have put some grains of potassium permanganate. Now let us see, but the upper part of the beaker is not pink, it is light pink. Now let us see what happens when I start heating this beaker over a flame. So you can see some changes are being observed. The color is gradually moving and it's distributed throughout the beaker. This happens because the water molecules are heated, which are at the bottom of the beaker, and they gradually start moving up and heat the other molecules which are cold. So in this way the transfer of heat in liquids takes place by the process of convection. Let us see the third mode of transfer of heat. The third mode of transfer of heat is known as radiation, where no particular medium is required for heat to transfer. For this we have taken a small setup. I take a candle with me in front of a burner, and I bring this candle very close to the burner but without contact. I keep it close. Now let us see what happens. Mind you, there is no contact between the flame and the candle directly. There is a gap which you can see. What do we observe? Now when I bring a small pin, this pin got stuck in this candle. That means because of the heat from this burner flame, the wax of the candle has molten, because of which the pin got easily stuck. However, there was no contact between the flame of the burner and the candle. This is how the rays of the sun reach the earth. Do all materials conduct heat? Do all materials allow heat to pass through them. And you have seen the activities, the three activities. What we can conclude, what we can think from those activities, out of the three activities? All the materials, they do not allow the transfer of heat. Some materials they do allow, whereas some they do not allow. Therefore, we classify them as conductors and non-conductors or insulators. Conductors allow the transfer of heat from one end to the other end. For example, aluminium, copper, steel. When you take hot tea on a glass made of steel, the whole steel becomes hot and you have to wait for some time for the tea to cool down. Because the transfer of heat takes place from one end of the glass steel to the other end. So such type of materials are called conductors. You must be noticing that in your homes also, all the materials which are used for cooking food are made of either copper or steel or aluminium, because the heat is distributed equally in the utensils. A simple example which you have also seen in the activity. If I start heating one end of this pair of tongs, which is made of steel, slowly the heat will be transferred and it will reach the other end, which will also become hot. So this is an example of a conductor. Whereas a plastic bottle, if we start heating this plastic bottle at the lower end, the heat will never be transferred to the other end, because this is an example of insulator, or also called non-conductor. Therefore, these materials do not allow transfer of heat. For example, glass, plastic, wood, rubber, and you can name many of those which you find around you. Your mother, using the utensils in the kitchen, has many utensils whose handles are made of plastic or wood. Why is it so? Students, if you think it, you will get the answer. Because when heat is conducted in the utensil made of copper or aluminium, the heat does not travel through the plastic, and so you can easily hold it. In some utensils which do not have the handles, you always use cloth or paper to remove them from the gas stove, because paper or cloth are non-conductors or insulators. Let us take a small example of this scissor. A pair of scissors with me. Very easily you can identify the conductor and the insulator part of it. Well, to tell you, the cutting portion of this pair of scissors is conductor, whereas the holding portion or the handle is the insulator. Therefore, a simple example of a conductor and insulator in the same object is the scissor. Moreover, iron, which is used for pressing your clothes, the handles are always made of plastics, so that the heat from the iron does not reach the handle and ultimately you suffer from burnt. In this activity, we are going to measure the temperature of cold water and we are going to heat the same amount of water for a certain amount of time and then measure its temperature. Thereafter, we will mix the two and measure the temperature of the mixture, and we will see what is the result. Now let us measure the temperature of this cold water. The temperature of this cold water is 26 degrees Celsius. The beaker containing the same amount of water will be heated for a while, and you know the transfer of heat takes place here inside the water by the process of convection. So gradually the molecules which are heated up rise and heat the other molecules which are colder, and hence the whole liquid becomes warm and ultimately hot. So we have heated the water for about a minute, thereafter which we are going to measure the temperature. So the temperature of this hot water, it's still rising, and ultimately it is 50 degrees centigrade. Now we are going to mix hot water to the beaker containing cold water and finally measure the temperature, which is also known as equilibrium temperature. So the temperature of this mixture is 39 degrees Celsius. Therefore, we see that heat always travels from a hotter body to a colder body, from a hotter liquid to a colder liquid, from a hotter object to a colder object. This temperature of water is also known as equilibrium temperature. In the television, you must have seen people taking rest on a sea beach. Why do they do so? On a hot day, they take rest on a sea beach. It is because the cool air or cool breeze from the sea moves towards the land during the daytime. This movement of cool breeze from the sea to the land is known as sea breeze. This happens during the daytime. It is because during the daytime, the sea and the land, they start heating up because of the rays of the sunlight. However, the sea heats very, very slowly and the land heats faster. It is a solid object. Therefore, there is difference of pressure in the sea and the land. So, this is the reason why the cool breeze moves from a region of high pressure developed in the sea to a region of low pressure in the land. When the hot air from the land rises up to take its place cool air from the sea moves towards the land. Just the opposite happens in the case of land breeze. In the case of land breeze, which takes place during the night time, since the land is a solid made up of soil, it becomes cooler faster than the sea, which has water in it. Therefore, a difference of pressure is created. Just the opposite of sea breeze, the cool air from the land moves towards the sea. Because the hot air from the sea rises up, a low pressure is created, and cool air from a region of high pressure from the land moves towards the sea, and hence this phenomena is known as land breeze. So land breeze and sea breeze occur due to the difference of pressure between the land and the sea. I hope you have understood the various points that we have discussed in this chapter, students. Now let us see briefly, let us have a summary of whatever we have learned in this chapter. We have learned about the temperature, the meaning of temperature, hotness, coldness of an object. We have learned the units of temperature, the 3 units of temperature: degree Celsius, degree Fahrenheit, and Kelvin. We have learned that there are 3 types of thermometers: clinical thermometer, laboratory thermometer, and maximum and minimum thermometer. We have also learned how heat is transferred by different ways: by the process of conduction in solids, convection in liquids, and radiation, where no medium is required for the transfer of heat. We have also learned about conductors and insulators, the materials which allow the transfer of heat, and those materials which do not allow the transfer of heat. And finally, we have learned about the phenomena of sea breeze and land breeze occurring in our environment. We have also performed few activities so that the understanding of this chapter becomes easier for you and you are able to grasp the chapter thoroughly and relate it with the day-to-day activities, because science is not only found in the classrooms, it is found wherever we go. From the time we wake up till we go to our bed, science has a key role to play in our lives. Without science, our lives are simply vague or unfulfilled.